Hello everybody, the priest is back, and from what you can see right there in front of you and from the title of the video, I am once again going to be talking about the legendary metal gods Judas Priest. And I have talked about them several times on this channel before. I have done an episode of Face Off with them versus Iron Maiden. I have done an album ranking video, and I have reviewed 2 of their albums before, and actually Judas Priest was the subject of the 3rd episode I ever did. Now, there are a lot of albums that I could have chosen from to focus on tonight on Album Rant. I could have done maybe Screaming for Vengeance, or maybe British Steel, or Painkiller, or Defenders of the Faith, but I decided to go with one of their more early releases, their 3rd actual studio album released in 1977, entitled Sin After Sin. And in case you don't know this by this point, they actually formed a lot earlier than you might think. They actually go all the way back to the year 1969, and they formed in Birmingham, England by someone by the name of Al Atkins. Now, I don't think, and actually I know for a fact, he never actually played on any official Judas Priest albums, but he does have a writing credit here and there. But essentially, he wanted to form a band, and he recruited a lot of various other members, and they went through a ton of lineup changes in their early days. And at one point, they did actually audition a guitarist by the name of Kenneth Downing, also known as K.K. Downing. Names sound familiar? I bet it does. But anyways, none of these members, like I said, lasted long enough to record an actual album. And they had a lot of hardships, a lot of financial hardships in those early days, and the band split in the year 1970. But then later, Atkins decided to put another band together, and he was this time actually joined and assisted by guitarist K.K. Downing and someone else by the name of Ian Hill. Names sound familiar? And they later found a drummer by the name of John Ellis. However, John Ellis left. He did not last very long, and he was replaced by someone by the name of Alan Moore, who actually did perform on their 2nd album, Sad Wings of Destiny. And they wrote a ton of songs, and the thing is this: back in those early days, they were not the metal gods that you know them as today. They were more of a blues rock band, and it's very apparent in those early releases, specifically Rock-a-Rolla, which I will get to in just a second. But some of the songs they wrote in those very early days were called Never Satisfied, Winter, and Caviar and Mess. And there was also a little old song called Whiskey Woman. And Whiskey Woman would kind of be chopped up and put back together with other arrangements. And it would eventually become a song called Victim of Changes, which today is considered to be a Judas Priest classic. And having said that, it seemed they were on the right path, but Atkins had to leave once again because of financial hardships. And so in 1973, he was out, and he was going to have to be replaced. They recruited a drummer by the name of John Hinch, and someone else, a little old guy by the name of Rob Halford. Yes, sound familiar? And he actually found his way. He got his into the band by being the brother of one of Ian Hill's girlfriends, of all things. And so by this point, they only needed one more piece of the puzzle. They recruited another guitarist by the name of Glenn Tipton, and they now had what would be 80% of the classic lineup. They had Rob Halford on lead vocals. They had K.K. Downing on lead guitar. They had Glenn Tipton on lead guitar. They had Ian Hill on bass and John Hinch on the drums. And they released their very first actual album in the year 1974. I want to say. It was, 74. And as I already revealed, it was entitled Rock-a-Rolla. And also, as I previously revealed, it was a much different album than what the band is associated with today. Again, this was a more blues rock album, and that's not to say it was bad, because it did have some pretty decent songs on there, such as One for the Road, the title track. And actually, when I saw them in 2021, they actually did perform the title track, and it was a very welcome addition. They had a little 4-part suite going entitled Winter, Deep Freeze, Winter Retreat, and Cheater. And of course, we have the aforementioned Never Satisfied. We had Dying to Meet You, and an 8-minute track entitled Run of the Mill, which I really think you do need to hear, because it is an incredibly underrated track, and I really, really love it. But so anyways, in the year 1976, John Hinch, the drummer, he left the band, and he was replaced by Alan Moore. And they released their second studio release entitled Sad Wings of Destiny. And this one was a major improvement from Rock-a-Rolla. On my Judas Priest album ranking video, I did rank Sad Wings of Destiny much higher than Rock-a-Rolla. And it had a lot of songs that are still performed in concert today, such as The Ripper, such as Tyrant, such as Victim of Changes, which I discussed earlier. And they had some other hits, such as Dreamer Deceiver, Genocide, and Island of Domination. And so, as I said, they really seem to be on the right track. This one was a lot more progressive than Rock-a-Rolla was, and it had a lot more complex and intricate arrangements, which I really enjoyed, actually. And so they seem to be evolving into what we know them as today, but they weren't quite there yet. Now, their record company for the first 2 releases was Gull Records. And according to the band, they were not being very supportive of the band's endeavors. And they later caught the attention of CBS Records, and that was definitely a more high-profile record company, and they could definitely get a lot more attention if they were able to switch to CBS Records, and they did. But the thing is this, with Gull Records, they had to breach their contract, and through a whole bunch of legal jargon, essentially they lost the rights to their first 2 albums and a greatest hits album they released around that time, and a single called Diamonds and Rust, or a cover of Diamonds and Rust, that they recorded around that time. Diamonds of Rust, of course, being a Joan Baez cover. So anyways, now they're with CBS Records, and they released their 3rd studio release in the year 1977, and that is what I am going to be talking about today. Now, Alan Moore, the drummer, was let go by the band because allegedly he did not have a technique that was very well suited for the band's evolving sound at the time, and so he was replaced by session musician Simon Phillips. Now, officially, at the time, they did not have an official drummer. A session musician is someone who comes in and just plays the part on the album, even though he's not actually a credited member of the band. So I hope that makes sense. So this is actually the only album where there were only 4 official members. So remember that. So let's see what we have over here. Now, this is a remastered copy. I do not have an original press, so sorry about that. But right there, we have some lyrics. We have the band credits. See right there, there's only 4 of them. They don't have an official drummer on this one. And then over on the back, what's here? We just have some landscape artwork. So there's that at least. Now on the back, we've got an actual track list. So I'm gonna have to kind of zoom in here. This is a little bit awkward. And so yeah. Right there, the very first track, or the very first song from side A, is the unofficial title track of the album, even though technically this album does not actually have a title track. But it is The Sinner! And Sinner, guys, is one of my very favorite Judas Priest songs. This one starts off with a very electric guitar intro. It's like, and it's just phenomenal. It's just so heavy and just so in your face. I love it. But then after that, the song kind of moves into more of a rock and roll feel, if that makes any sense. Make no mistake, this is definitely a hard rock / maybe heavy metal song, but just the feel of it sounds more rock and roll, which I think is a very novel approach. Now, I've seen them, how many times? 4 times. And they played Sinner twice, actually. They played it on the Firepower Tour, and they played it on the Invincible Shield Tour. And I had an absolute blast every single time. This was one of those songs that I was, pumping my fist, banging my head, and I just had an absolute blast with it. But the lyrics, I think, flow very, very well. You have Sinner Rider rides in with the storm. The devil rides beside him. The devil is his guide, gonna help you mourn. Do you hear it? Do ya? Do you hear the thunder? And yeah, I just really, really love Sinner. Now, the chorus, I think, is also very, very catchy as well. I mean, it's basically, sacrifice to vice or die by the hand of the sinner! The sinner! And I probably did that horribly. I am no Rob Halford, guys, as you probably just heard. But yeah, Sinner is a very, very great opening song. This one goes on for over 6 minutes. It's like 6 minutes and change, like 6.5 minutes or so. And just in the middle, there's a pretty phenomenal jam session, if that, for what it is. I mean, I really do love the way that Sinner just kind of grooves and moves along, and I just think it absolutely rocks. And then at the end, we have a rather interesting arrangement at all, where it just goes, Sinner, 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 Sinner! And once again, it goes right back into that chorus that I just alluded to, and it closes things out very, very well, in my opinion. So yes, Sinner is highly recommended. I think Sinner is considered to be one of the better tracks from this album, but it doesn't show up much on Greatest Hits compilations, which I think is pretty interesting. Now, the second track is actually a re-recording of a cover that they did back in the gold record days, Joan Baez's Diamonds and Rust. Now, as I said before, that initial cover they did of Diamonds and Rust, it did get them some radio play in their early days. This album is actually produced by Roger Glover. Yes, that Roger Glover. And he kind of encouraged the band to do a re-recording of Diamonds and Rust. Diamonds and Rust never actually made it onto an actual album. It was not on Rock-A-Rolla or Sad Wings of Destiny. But he was like, go ahead, record a new version of Diamonds and Rust. We can't put the old one on this album because, Gold Records owns it. Gold Records pretty much owns everything having to do with music, so that's pretty much not an option. So they did record another version of Diamonds and Rust, and that is what is on this album. And I think it's a pretty decent cover. Now, obviously, I am not a huge Joan Baez fan. Just for sheer morbid curiosity, I did listen to the original version on YouTube, and really not my thing, not my genre of music. If you like it, I think that's great, but it's really just not for me. But yeah, I mean, I think it flows pretty well. It's got a pretty good kick to it, and it's pretty emotional as well. Very catchy, and I think it is a pretty welcome addition. So yeah, Diamonds and Rust, highly recommended. But I think the official version of this is actually the version that is on their live album, Unleashed in the East, which would come out 2 years later. So now we move to track 3, the Star Breaker. And this one starts out with a very good drum intro by Simon Phillips. And it's a lot slower than Sinner. It's definitely a rocker, while Diamonds and Rust, I guess I would call that a ballad, but this one is a little bit slower, but it definitely is a rocker, and I think it's pretty solid. I've heard a lot of comments on, online message boards and YouTube, people just saying, Priest needs to start playing this one again. It's great. It may not be my favorite, but I would definitely welcome hearing that at a concert, so I plan on seeing them in September, so if they played it, I would not be disappointed. But, the lyrics go, look out, here's Starbreaker cruising into town. Set his mind to stealing every heart around. Step out on the sidewalks if you're feeling game. He comes but once a lifetime, never seen again. Starbreaker glides in from the sky. Starbreaker takes you up so high. And I did my very best there, but yeah, pretty jamming tune. I like it. Now, the last song from side A is a song that I really did not appreciate too much as a kid. This is Last Rose of Summer, I should say. Last Rose of Summer. Yeah, okay. This is a really kind of haunting, kind of moody ballad, and Judas Priest did a couple of songs much like this on Rock-A-Rolla and Sad Wings of Destiny. So I really see this song as kind of a holdover from the Gold Records days, and I mean, it could have been worse, it really could have, but this one isn't really fully my cup of tea. It's, like I said, it's a very dark ballad, but it's also incredibly soft, and it's just not really quite my style of music, but I mean, it is kind of catchy, and it is a pretty interesting look into the early days of this band's discography, and so I think it is worth a listen, but again, Judas Priest doing ballads doesn't always mix that well, and I think it could have mixed better right here, but anyways, my favorite from side number 1 is definitely The Sinner, an all-time Judas Priest classic, one of my favorite Judas Priest songs, and again, hearing it in concert in 2018 and 2024, it was a very, very significant experience in my life, so I really did enjoy that. Last Rose of Summer is probably the weakest one from side A, but I really don't think it's as bad as I thought it was back when I was a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old. So yeah, we have that. So that is going to conclude side A, so let's move on to side number B. Starts off with Let Us Pray, and this one is kind of a two-parter. It's kind of a more proggy, progressive number, if that makes sense. And it's divided up into two different segments. The first segment is very dark, and it's kind of setting the mood. And, you know, it's very gloomy, very dark, and kind of brooding. And it's very slow as well. It's definitely trying to elicit kind of an eerie, evil kind of atmosphere. But then eventually, the song starts picking up. Halford comes in with his falsetto. And by the way, Halford has one of the best falsettos in the very business. And then after around the halfway point, things just start hitting the fan left and right. The song starts picking up, it starts getting kicked into high gear, and it is just fast, okay? It's like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Probably did that incorrectly, but it was about that speed, and so yeah, it's a very fast, very heavy number once it actually starts getting going, but that doesn't mean I dislike the first half. The first half is really good build-up for the second half, but I like the first half because it complements the second half so well. They're really very different. Like the first half sounds a lot different from the second half, but I think that's why I like it so much. When we have contrasting tempos and contrasting atmospheres, sometimes I think that works very well, and it does work well very here. But yeah, this is almost speed metal actually in a way. But yeah, Let Us Pray, great song. Now we come to the third song, and actually, Call for the Priest is actually the second part of it's the second part of the fifth track, but this one is kind of arranged a little awkwardly. The sixth track, the second track from side number 2, is actually Raw Deal, so that looks like a typo actually. But Raw Deal is a little bit slower, kind of got a bluesy feel to it. I mean, the opening guitar goes dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Almost sounds like classic rock in a sense. Now, this is definitely a metal song, or definitely bordering on metal if you don't consider this to be metal. But yeah, the intro or the opening guitar, like I said, does sound a lot like classic rock or classic blues rock, if that makes sense. I think it's a pretty decent song for what it is. Again, a little bit slower, a little bit bluesier, which is not a bad thing, but it's just a thing that happened. Now, apparently, this is considered to be a coming out song, as in referring to Rob Halford's homosexual orientation. He actually did allude to this on the previous album with Island of Domination, which was the closing track, and Raw Deal seems to continue that theme. Now, Rob did not actually come out until 1998, but I mean, just think about it. I mean, just listen to some of the lyrics he wrote. Was it really that big of a shocker? So, yeah, Raw Deal may just be one of the weaker songs on here, but I do like it. But then, just like Last Rose of Summer, we're going to do kind of another throwback to the early days with Here Come the Tears. And this is another very brooding song, kind of a ballad in a sense. Maybe it's not quite a ballad the way Last Rose of Summer is, in the sense that it's probably not trying to elicit an emotional punch or anything, but at the same time, this thing is very dark but very soft at the same time. And it's a lot different from Priest's classic sound, and that may be a turnoff for some people. But I just gotta say, listening to this again as an adult, I definitely did not like this song as a kid. I actually have come to appreciate a lot more, and so I actually do recommend Here Come the Tears. It may not be for everyone, and I totally get it, but again, it's got a very dark, brooding atmosphere. It's kind of a haunting ballad in a sense, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I really do enjoy Here Come the Tears, and like I said, this would probably be the last time that Judas Priest ever wrote and performed something of this nature. They kind of abandoned the whole haunting ballad approach on their next album. They just started writing straight-ahead, full-fledged metal songs or hard rock songs. So this is kind of the last time they did anything like this. So yeah, it's kind of closing that chapter of the book, if that makes any sense. Now, Here Come the Tears starts to kind of fade out a little bit, but it doesn't fully fade out because it actually segues into the album closer, Dissident Aggressor. And this song was kind of ignored for a while, but it did resurface in the year 2010 when Judas Priest released a live album. Now, this live album was called A Touch of Evil, which did not feature the song A Touch of Evil. Okay, and the point of the live album was to kind of give recognition or give shout-outs to some of the songs that have kind of fallen through the cracks throughout the years. And one of the songs that ended up on that album was Dissident Aggressor. And people really seem to like it. People really seem to start to appreciate this song a lot more because it won a Grammy in 2010 for Best Metal Performance. Yes, that is a thing that happened, and I am so glad it happened because this is an explosive, very fast, very heavy album closer. It's only about 3 minutes or so and change, but it's worth every single second of it. And it starts out and it's building up. It has to build up because Here Comes the Tears, or Here Come the Tears, ended things on a rather sour note, a very dark and gloomy note. And so as it segues into Dissident Aggressor, it starts building up and building up and building up until after a couple of seconds or so, the song just explodes and it starts getting really heavy, very fast. And Halford, man, he is just coming in with this falsetto that just sounds so incredibly awesome. And I really, really love Dissident Aggressor. And like I said, the beat is good, the rhythm is good, the speed is good, it's heavy, Halford is on point. This is a great Judas Priest song. Apparently, it is about the Berlin Wall. Now, the Berlin Wall would not come down for over 10 years after this album was released. So it's not about the fall of the Berlin Wall. That did not happen until much later. But apparently it's about being on the west side and looking out into the east side, and it just looks dead. There are no lights, the economy's not doing too well, and all you really see are Russian guys looking right back at you. But like I said, this is such an aggressive song, definitely the most aggressive on this album, and it definitely is the most metal song that is on this album, okay? Now, the lyrics, I mean, we have Grand Canyons of space and time, universal. My mind is subjected to all. Stab, ball, crunch, punch, crawl. Hooks to my brain are well in. Stab, brawl, punch, crawl. I know what I am, I'm Berlin. So yeah, we have Berlin. He's Berlin apparently. So there we go. But yeah, great song, great rhythm. I love the lyrics. Something else I think is really, really interesting is at the end, he kind of changes up the chorus a little bit. I just kind of pathetically sang the first verse and chorus. I did my very best there. But at the very end, it goes, I'm stabbing and bawling, I'm punching and crawling, hooks to my brain are well in. I'm stabbing and bawling, I'm punching and crawling, I know what I am, I'm Berlin. So yeah, it's a really interesting rearrangement of the chorus, and I think it really does a lot for the rhythm and the atmosphere of the song, and we have such an explosive ending, and Sin After Sin ends on a very, very explosive and epic note, I guess, in more ways than one. So yes, that is going to conclude my review of Sin After Sin. Now, whatever happened to Simon Phillips? Well, he was actually offered the spot of their lead drummer going forward. They definitely wanted him to play on the tour, but Simon Phillips couldn't quite commit to the rigorous hardships and rigor of being on the road, and so he rejected the offer. And for the tour, he was replaced by Les Binks, who would be their drummer on the next two albums, Stained Class and Killing Machine. So that's how we basically ended things. Do I recommend Sin After Sin? You bet I do. Sin After Sin was actually my third favorite Judas Priest song in my Judas Priest album rankings. It only lost to Screaming for Vengeance and Stained Class, so I absolutely do recommend this album. This is one of their more underrated efforts. Seems to fall through the cracks a bit. I think you need to pick it up. I think you need to listen to it, because this one kind of serves as the bridge between their early days and what would soon be their classic sound, and I just cannot recommend this enough. So anyways, thank you all very much for joining me tonight on tonight's episode of Album Rant. Next time, we're going to look at a real headbanger, but until then, have a very pleasant evening.